Hey there. So we're going to do the second video in my ministry strategies series. There's 5 videos. This is number 2. The first video we did an overlook of our idea of ministry strategies and our spiritual levels. So let's start there again. I'm going to head back over to my work table here and let's take a look here. Here is our ministry funnel. And the concept is there are 4 levels of spiritual development that kids can go through. Outreach, which means non-Christian. When they make the commitment, that's our dark line, they come into what we call growth level. This is a level where they're learning about their faith, they're studying the Bible, they're going to youth group meetings, they have Sunday school, and it's building all the basics of their faith. So they understand their faith that they believe in. And at a point, they then are ready to get equipped to do ministry, to get involved. And this is when we're teaching them things like how to counsel your friends, how to share your faith, how to welcome and engage a new person who comes into youth group, okay? As we move them through this progression, when these kids are ready, we unleash them in our ministry and we start targeting outreach level kids. And we create this cycle of kids come to my group and they're met by my ministry level students. They accept Christ, they are growing. And I've added some things here in a large group setting and a place where they can ask questions. We'll talk more about that in a minute. Eventually, they are wanting to get involved in ministry, especially if they see other students doing it. And then this creates this cycle of people moving through. And the more kids you have doing this, the faster your youth group will grow. Okay, and in the course of doing this, you will occasionally have kids who want to get more involved. It's kids with the gift of leadership. Okay, and I can actually equip these kids and say, hey, why don't you take charge of planning some games? Or why don't you take charge of our social media? You give them areas of responsibility in the ministry, and that helps develop leadership. And these kids will be the youth pastors and youth workers and church workers of the future. So we're going to target in on our starting point for how we get started. And ironically, it's not outreach. Okay, I want you to take a look at this growth level at a start. And let's talk about that for a second. Imagine that you come into a church setting, okay? And you just got hired as the new youth guy. And it's usually one of a couple things you're going to walk into. One, there is no youth group meeting. There's no youth group developed, and it's your job to start it. So you're going to look at your roster, and you're going to find the families that are active in church and kids who have been active at church. And guess what these kids are? Growth level. They are probably Christian kids. They've been to Sunday school and church stuff. Maybe they come to church with their parents or whichever. And you're going to start with those kids. That's one scenario. Another possible scenario is you walk into a ministry that's developed, but most meetings, most youth groups don't do a lot of the other levels. And so you're going to walk into mostly growth level kids. Okay. So we start programming usually at growth level. The exception to that is if you walk into a ministry that's well developed. And if it is, you have the opportunity to already start doing the next level, which is working with your ministry level equipped kids and starting to do outreaches. But we're going to assume for the most part, that's not the case. So let's go back to our table here and we're going to talk about outreach level. Growth level. So we're talking about growth level, and let's look at a couple things about growth level. And I just made some notes here. Okay, one thing, growth level is the easiest thing to program, and that's because about 87% of the stuff we plan in a youth group is growth level. It's designed to grow their faith. It's not designed to equip them, and it's typically not specifically designed to reach non-Christians. And look at our list there. Your typical youth group meeting, when you're teaching up front, when you're playing games with kids and giving them a lesson. Okay, Sunday school, where you're diving into scripture and doing those kind of things. Or small groups, when you're doing that. This is all growth level. The big challenge isn't coming up with growth level stuff. The big challenge is coming up with things that aren't growth level. And we'll talk more about those. So let's dive into what growth level is. Okay, growth level comes in basically 2 levels. And I want you to understand this. Okay, when we come to our growth level thing, when kids become Christians, big group setting is pretty good. And that's typical. You stand up front, you're teaching a lesson, they hear your lesson, they are challenged by your lesson, they grow spiritually. Magnificent. But eventually, in this process, doubts and questions are going to start coming up, and that's where the small group comes in. Okay, you can start this right away, you can start it in a little bit, but you will need to start this. And here's the thing about small groups. Okay, as kids are growing in their faith, they're going to get doubts. They're going to hear things from other friends. They're going to get questions maybe about their faith that they don't know how to answer. And they got to work through those doubts before they are convinced enough to get involved in ministry. So small groups matter. So let's talk about what a small group is. Okay, typically small groups are anywhere from 6 to 8 or 10 kids. You've got 1 or 2 leaders with them. They typically are working through questions or something that relate to your lesson. And so the format we have typically done is something like this. I'm going to give you a little glance at what a youth group meeting can look like. Okay, typically when kids come in for a growth level meeting, I do some kind of fun game or activity. And this is just bringing them from the chaos and randomness of the world into, hey, let's do something together and get kind of a sense of togetherness. Okay, from there we usually work into worship. Now, some groups like to sing, some groups don't like to sing. There are a lot of ways to worship though. It can be watching music video, it can be singing up front, it can be singing to videos, it can be, people can worship by writing things, people can worship by painting. Watching a video of someone painting a worship painting, and by the way, go YouTube that sometime, it's pretty sweet. Find ways that this connects with a lot of people. You can watch videos of celebrities sharing their testimonies, and that's a good thing too. But the worship thing, there's a lot of different ways to worship. Some of you, your kids do like to sing, and so it's going to look pretty conventional. But think outside the box on worship. Look at all the different ways that you can worship, okay? From the worship thing, we typically go to our big group meeting. Okay, this is me standing up front, and usually I present a lesson or the topic for the lesson. I'll give them some illustrations and a little bit of thought on Bible stuff in a big group setting. But this is not long for me. 10 minutes, 12 minutes maybe, because the meat of my teaching is happening in the small group. And this is question sheets that I've made ahead of time, given my leaders ahead of time. They've had maybe a week to look them over, ask me questions for clarification, and they are ready to go. Okay, in a smaller group, it may be me teaching up front and then opening up questions and discussion within my group. Okay, but this is key. You got to give a kid's chance to ask questions and process questions and doubts for them to continue moving forward in the faith. Last thing, typically, I would get all the kids back together. If I separated them, I would make a couple statements to wrap up, and that's the end of our meeting. This can be 60 to 90 minutes long as typical, but you kind of need a program according to your group's needs. So, a couple last things about this. Weekly, okay? In my opinion, your youth ministry meeting is the heartbeat of your program, okay? It's the meeting that most kids are likely to come to, and it needs to be regular enough that they can track, is it happening this week? I have known youth groups that meet every other week. I'm a little skeptical of that, and it's because when we have tried to change our schedule or made it intermittent like that, church kids know when it is because they get your newsletter, they read it, okay, your text message group or whatever. It's the fringe kids and visitors who want to drop in that end up losing because they don't know, is this the week we're meeting or is this the week they're not meeting? That communication is so hard and it's hard to track, and you don't want to give people a reason to not come to your meeting. Okay, I would challenge you, if you're not meeting weekly, start meeting weekly, okay? If they know it's every Wednesday night or every Sunday night, when it is, and you keep that heartbeat going, you have a better chance of fringe people dropping in. Okay, so let's take one last little overview and look at this, okay? All right, we are focusing on the starting point of growth level, okay? We are focusing on big group lessons where we're teaching from up front, and or small group discussions so kids can work through questions and doubts in their faith. Okay, this phase typically will take, it can take a year to year and a half, and I base that on Jesus' ministry. It took him about 18 months from encountering the disciples to when he started giving them responsibilities for ministry. And in that time, he did a lot of teaching to them. What's the kingdom going to look like? What is Jesus' new teaching? You've heard this, but I say that. This is growth level, and he spent 18 months doing growth level teaching with the disciples before he started giving them ministry responsibilities. That's a reasonable time frame. If I come into a new church, I can expect that it's going to take me, if I'm building a new ministry, a year to year and a half before I start equipping my kids to do ministry and doing ministry level, which is the next level we'll talk about. Okay? As we look at this, one other thing I find interesting, and this is kind of leading into our next level. Imagine this is all you do. Okay, so when they come in, maybe they come in ninth grade and they're sitting in your big group meeting and they've had small groups. And maybe in 10th grade, they start attending and they keep going. And by 11th grade, they've been in this for 2 years. They've heard your dating talk. They've heard your other talks. And we never move down and start equipping them. This is why kids drop out of youth group. Because if youth group doesn't equip and challenge them to do something, to get more involved, to take their gifts and use them, then they're just sitting. They're spectators. They're growing in their faith, but they're done growing, and now they need to start doing things and getting equipped. So this transition is really important, okay? In my growth level, I'll also highlight this. People ask, so what things do you teach, okay? Here's what I would do, and this is important. I would come up with my mind of what a discipled student looks like. Okay, what things can they do? What skills do they have? And when I broke this down for my ministries, it was typically something like they know how to use the Bible. They know how to meet regularly with other believers. They know how to pray. They know how to share their faith. They know how to serve and be involved. And if they could do those 5 things, that was success for me. So I focused a lot on those things in my ministry. My teaching revolved a lot around those things. That was my description of a discipled person, and that was the goal I'm working towards. So you may want to make a list of what are those traits. You can work with your pastor on that or work with your leadership team and propose what are the 5, 6. I wouldn't make too many because it gets a little complicated. It's something you're going to want to express to parents too. This can be something in your ministry that you communicate regularly. The goal of a discipled person is these 5 things or 6 things. Okay, that's what you're going to teach during that setting. So anyway, my last little turnaround here. Okay, that's growth level. This is teaching that grows their faith. Basically, we use a large group setting and a small group setting, and it prepares kids to get equipped to do ministry, which is the next level we're going to talk about. That's my favorite one personally. Watching kids do ministry that's my thing. So anyway, we'll catch you again in our next video, and I hope you enjoyed growth level.